Namaste. I guess the first question I have for you is what brought you here today? Now that might be a strange question, like, you caught a taxi or you walked here or you stayed in a hotel overnight. That wasn't the question. The question is, what brought you to this point in this room in Kathmandu on a Saturday morning in your lives? What brought you here? What event inspired you to follow this path in your career? Now, I'm not asking for feedback because it could be embarrassing for some people. But the question is, what brought you here today? How did you... Just checking that the AV is all working. No? Okay. How did you get here today? What part of your life journey brought you here? I'm going to share with you today one incident that brought me here from Australia. For those who don't understand the accent, I do apologize. It is a combination of South Africa, where I grew up, and the last 20 years in Australia. So what am I doing here, and what did my journey do to take me to be here with you today? So many years ago, I worked for a small little company in South Africa called Anglo American. It was at the time the largest mining house in South Africa. Now, to put that into context, it was not an agile organization, okay? It was an incredibly hierarchically structured organization. I was at the time a software engineer there. That's just an aside, by the way, and I wouldn't, in this esteemed company, I would not call myself a software engineer in today's terminology. I worked for this company called Anglo American, and I developed a love of airplanes because my first project that I was on was some 4 hours flying out of Johannesburg. And the first day, I got there in my open neck shirt, my jeans. I'm an engineer I got there, got to the local airport where we were taking off from, and all my flying colleagues arrived being dropped off by their chauffeurs. Now, you have to understand this organization, how structured it was. I was what was called a level C4 engineer. Okay? That meant I parked in the third parking lot away from the office. But if I was a level D1 engineer, I would have parked in the second parking lot. That's how hierarchically structured this organization was. So we get back to the aeroplane. I stand at the hangar, and I'm there in my jeans. I'd arrived in my car, which was a Mazda, with 180,000 kilometers on the clock. Bright yellow, in fact, mustard yellow. And I got on the plane, sat in the back, because all my other colleagues on the aeroplane were dropped off by their drivers, by their chauffeur-driven limousines, in fancy fitted suits and Italian shoes. So I felt a little bit out of it. I thought, I'm an engineer. I'm the youngest on the plane. I was 22. I would sit in the back row. I sat in the back row. We took off. And as the pilot put his head around the window and said, the cockpit, and said, "You can move around now," I said, "Okay, no problem." On the floor next to me was what in Australia, any Australians here? They call an esky, which is in other parts of the world called a cold box or a cooler box or something along those. There was a box on the floor with drinks in it. I opened the box and I was about to serve drinks, and I got a tap on the shoulder. Got a tap on the shoulder, and it wasn't the hand of God, thankfully, because we were in an airplane. I got a tap on the shoulder from the most senior director of Anglo American saying, "Please don't do that. In our airplanes, the most senior person has to serve the drinks, not the most junior. The most senior person has to serve the drinks." Think about that in the context of this highly structured, hierarchical, very much not agile organization. Okay? And suddenly, within the confines of this airplane, everything got turned on its head. So why do I tell you that story? Because some 32 years ago, my interest in culture started. Not this kind of culture, by the way. Culture a little bit more related to organizations. But my interest in culture started 32 years ago because I found an organization that was so staid and so boring in its organization could turn things on its head within the confines of a plane. I knew there was some hope. There was some hope out there. And so what did I do? Well, I went out, and you've heard that I came from South Africa. You've heard that I worked in Australia for the last 20 years. And so I went out and worked out, where are you going? So I started today by asking you a question. I asked you a question earlier today. What was that question? It said, where have you come from? How did you get here today? So now I'm going to look at, where are you going? Where is culture going? What is the future of work? What is the future of the organizations that you all work in? You've come together on a Saturday morning in Nepal with a common vision, with a common view of the world. Let's look at that. So to take my experience out of South Africa, and Australia, I've been doing some research. So far, I've interviewed 80 companies, in fact, 84 companies now, over 25 different countries. And I've asked them very, very simple questions in those companies. I've asked them, where do you come from? What is your culture now? Define the culture of your organization now. What are the problems with it? And what are you doing going forward? What are you doing? Where are you going with your culture going forward? And it's been an amazing experience interviewing these companies. And so to put a context around the future, I need to explain to you what some of these amazing companies have done. By the way, if any of you are saying, oh, I'd love my company to be a part of that, or I'd love our organization to be a part of this research, which will be my next book, please send me an email. That's just not an advert. That's just, I love people who have got different views. By the way, of the 84 interviews, 20 were about toxic cultures. Who's ever worked in, maybe your boss is here, so you don't want to admit it. Who's worked in a toxic culture? Okay, at least a few of you understand what that means. All right. So of those interviews that I've done, about 20 of those 84 were about people who wanted to tell me how bad their culture was. And the other 60-odd were telling me how brilliant their culture was. So that just gives you some idea that it wasn't just good news stories. So what did these companies have in common? What did these companies have that's very similar, in fact, to the Agile Alliance, to Agile Scrum? Okay? What did they have? So the first thing these companies had was purpose. Now, purpose is not your vision and mission statement. Okay? How many of you can repeat your company vision and mission? That was fantastic. Not only one hand, two hands went up. Okay. All right. I bet you I can tell you the vision and mission of all your companies. Now you're confused. Okay. The average company's vision and mission statement goes something like this. And I sound like a bit of a programmer when I do this. We are going to be the best. Open brackets, choose your option. Software developer, deliverer of XYZ product, close brackets. Using the best, open brackets, people, technology, etc., 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 close brackets. In the medical industry, blah, 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 close brackets. You got it? That sounds like most of your vision and mission statements of the companies. I'm talking about purpose. I'm talking about something that's greater than a vision and mission. So let me share some examples. The one was a software company out of South Africa that does follow agile methodologies. How do I know that? Because they wrote some software for my business in Australia, and that's how I got first-hand exposure to usage of these methodologies. So they have as a purpose statement 3 words. 3 words. Practical, genius, delivered. Practical, genius, delivered. I turned around to the chief executive and I said, that's fantastic. everybody in this everybody in this room, can you not see yourselves as part of Practical Genius Delivered? And I said, that's fantastic. Everybody, down to your cleaner in the organization who cleans the offices at night, and the secretary who answers the phone in the front desk, they all see themselves as part of this practical genius. And he said, well, that's a fantastic explanation. It's not what I meant. Okay, what did he mean? He said that as a software company with 150-odd software engineers, they wanted to deliver practical solutions that were clever and delivered to what the clients needed. Make sense? Practical genius delivered. But what does that do as a purpose of the organization? What does it do? You've all come on this journey. You've got to this point. We are here looking at the future. And part of the future is making sure that our organizations across the board have a common purpose, a common thing that's bigger than ourselves. So another example of a great purpose statement is a regional bank in Australia. So completely different view of the world, but it says assisting our members and their communities to better lives. Now, if you just saw that purpose statement, assisting our members and their communities to better lives, you'd think it was maybe a charity. You'd think it was, some not-for-profit or NGO, but it's a bank. But it's a bank with a very regional focus. The reason they chose that statement of purpose, they didn't choose it, it evolved over time. The reason they chose that statement of purpose was because every single person, from the person doing the filing in the filing room to the person front-facing to customers, understood that. Everyone got it. Nodding is good. It tells me you're awake. Okay? All right, I know it's early morning and you haven't had enough caffeine yet. As I said, I was a software engineer once and I had sort of a caffeine drip mostly feeding me. Okay. So most of the companies I interviewed had this thing called purpose. But a lot of them didn't have purpose, but they had a set of values. How many of your organizations have a value statement on the wall? Okay. Who can repeat those values? Okay, that was interesting. Most of the hands went down. Okay. So I'll bet your value statement looks a little bit like that. Is it up yet? Yes, it is. Wait. There we go. This was actually taken, I took this photograph at the JV between Accenture and Microsoft in Canada. Is this a good value set? No, I don't think so. It's not there as a good example. Okay? It's not there as a good example. What is a good example is the fact that Scrum and Scrum Alliance has a fantastic value set of 5 words. Do you all know what those 5 words are? Okay, I'll get to those in a minute. A few people nodded. But there are a couple of the companies I interviewed, a couple of the companies that had value sets that were simple to remember. So I'm on the board. I do a lot of community work, and I'm on the board of a private school. And we had a meeting with another private school over east. And that's, to put Australia into context for those who haven't been there, over east is a 5.5-hour flight. So it's not like the perception of a very close thing. So we had a principal of a school from over east come and meet with us. And he told us about their fantastic strategic planning process. I don't know how many of you have been through this in organizations. This fantastic strategic planning process that doesn't give you anything. Okay. And he said to us, we've come up with this amazing set of values for our school. And we said to him, can you share them with us? And he said, just hold on, I just have to get it out my wallet. It's on a laminated card. And I thought, yeah, there's something wrong with that. If he as the principal, as this public figure, can't embody those values and put those values out there, then what does it actually mean? So the one organization that I interviewed has offices in 6 countries, 3 English-speaking, 3 non-English-speaking. They have staff, they're head officed in South Africa, but they have 3 offices in Europe and others in America and Canada. And they have a value set made up of 5 words. 5 words, that's it. And every single employee knows those 5 words. And the first of those words is fun. If you're not having fun, don't work here. Who's having fun at work, by the way? Okay. That's a good thing. You're here on a Saturday and you're still having fun. Okay. All right, so fun. The second one was authenticity. You had to be authentic to the brand. Their brand was key to everything. You had to be authentic. But the third of those values was accountability. It brought it back to hard terms. You had to be accountable for what you're doing. You had to be accountable and deliver for what you are doing. The fourth of those values was curiosity. Now, why curiosity? It's an interesting one. And it very much, okay. I noticed that nobody responded, so obviously those sorts of things are fairly normal. Okay. Why curiosity? And it's very much aligned with agile teams, because you need to understand, and in their terms, in their organization, excuse me, curiosity is understand how your job fits in with everyone else's job. Understand how your job relates to everyone else so that you can see, if you can't deliver, how it's going to impact on other people. And the fifth of those, which actually is one of the agile values, is courage. Okay? Courage to stand up, to give new ideas, to push new ideas, to come up with new ideas. So I thought that was a great value set for a company unrelated to anything to do with most of you today. But it had an interesting value set. And I love the fact that fun was the most important to their values. Because if people aren't enjoying work, enjoying going to work, then you have a problem. So the second one was a software example as well. It was a company in America that has 500 staff. 150 in Silicon Valley, 150 in Arlington, Virginia, and 200 people working from home or from small regional offices around America. So if you think about it from a human resource perspective, how do you make those 200 people working remotely feel part of the team? Okay, they don't. I didn't actually have this. So this was one of my very first interviews, and I actually don't know what methodologies they employ in that organization. So I'm care to admit that, but they chose the word propel as their values. Propel, one word, propel. What does propel mean to you when you think of the word? It means to lift, to get speed, to go forward, to lift up. And each one of those things meant something, okay? The first was people, that obviously people are the most critical component, particularly in an industry like this where it is about people. Responsibility, going back to the same set of values. You can't have values without responsibility. Originality, purpose, learning, and excellence were the 6 words. Why excellence? Why excellence? That's an interesting word. Why not perfection? Hello? Anyone out there? Okay. Why not perfection? Because excellence means you're doing the best you can do. The best you can be is excellent. And therefore, you're always searching for perfection. And so if you look at this purpose and values as basic tenets of where you're going as organizations, the third component there is pride. That is pride. That is when you stand at work and you wear the company t-shirt. Has anyone noticed how many of you have got company t-shirts? How many of you got the company logo on your left? Okay. It's just a remarkable human phenomenon. It's by the heart. I don't know if that's why it was designed that way, but I thought about it and I said, people wear the company logo close to their heart. Do they have pride in that logo? I was lucky enough to interview the HR director of Microsoft. And he said to me, of the 90,000 staff worldwide, majority of them would feel pride in wearing that. Now, that was his view, but it was an interesting idea. He said people are proud to wear that logo on their shirt. Okay, so just an idea around pride. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the people. It comes down to the people. And if your people are disengaged, now, we started off with talking about fun values. Let's look at disengagement, which is the opposite side of that. And I have a whole lot of tools. I'm not pushing any tools on you. I'm just showing you an extract of one of the tools that I use, which measures employee disengagement or employee engagement. What was remarkable about this survey, and I've highlighted the one point there, is that there were a number of people who were disengaged, and if those people left, potentially it would cost $1.2 million to replace them. And so if we're not building teams, if we're not building for the future a culture that goes forwards, then we're not engaging with our team. If we're not engaging with our team, and that's what appealed to me, by the way, in all my understanding of Agile and Scrum. Okay, was the flexibility of the teams. You know, I grew up from a business school background. I was at business school, and I'm really dating myself now. Some 30 years ago, 31 years ago, I was actually at business school. And we did the traditional stuff. We learned about team building. Hang on. We learned about team building. And what happened with teams? There were 4 words they used to describe teams. Forming, norming, storming, and performing. Anyone heard that? Right. With Agile, you just leave out the first 3. Okay? You form a team for a particular project. You're all committed. Okay? All right? And suddenly you try and leave out those first 3 because in order to make it a productive team, you have to go to performing straight away. And that's the role of the Scrum Master and the product owner, whatever. It doesn't matter. The fact is, in 30 years, it's been short-circuited. That idea of taking time to build a team and find out the norms and things of the team, those are long gone. We are at a crossroads, ladies and gentlemen. We're not actually because we're on a main road now, but we're at a crossroad. What is that crossroad we're at? We're at a crossroad of humanity and technology. Now, most of you in this room are going, no, we're just technology. Okay? Well, we're not. We're at a crossroad of humanity and technology. Now, on your tables are some red cards and green cards. They're not really for writing on, and in the interests of recycling, I'd like them back at the end of it. Can you each just grab a red card and a green card, and I'll give you about 30 seconds. You need one of each. If there aren't enough, there are some other big cards there of mine. Just you assume one of them is a green card. And I want to run a little fun exercise with you today. A little fun exercise to think about this intersection of humanity and technology. Okay. I do apologize if there aren't enough on each table. I did ask the team here to put them out, but there are some of my other sort of ace 5 cards on there. Just make those the green cards if you don't have enough. Right. So let me paint a scenario for you. You're all tech people. You are an observer on the trials of a driverless car. That's cool. You're standing on a bridge. You're standing on a bridge and you're watching this driverless car coming along. And the next thing, the car inexplicably does a 90-degree turn. And it's heading towards a family of 5 that are calmly standing there waiting for the bus. Everyone got that bit of the scenario? Hello? Nodding? Nodding is a good thing? Right. You have an app, because you're all tech people. You have an app, and on your app, you can press a button that will override the car and make that car swing 180 degrees to the other way. But it then will head towards the guy busy cutting the lawn who's got his headphones on and can't hear anything. So, let's go back through that again. You're standing on the bridge. This car does a violent turn to the left, and it's heading towards a family of 5. By pressing a button on your app, you can make it turn 180 degrees towards the guy mowing the lawn with his headphones on and can't hear anything. So I need you to interactively wave at me. Hold up the red card if you're not going to do anything and you're going to let the car go on its journey. And hold up the green card if you're going to press the button on the app and turn the car 180 degrees towards the gardener. Let's see your responses. Okay, now it's a pity the lights are out because that's about a 50-50. It's about 50-50. And that's normal, by the way. That is absolutely normal. Every time I've given this talk, I've spoken about this talk, and that's actually a whole talk all on its own. I've done that with people around the world, and I get about a 50-50 response every time I do that. But now I'm going to up the ante just a little bit. Now I'm going to make it a little bit more challenging at this crossroad of humanity and technology. So you're standing on the bridge, the car's veered left, it's heading towards the family of 5, but it's still going to come under your bridge. Now on your same app, you have a button. And if you press that button, a trapdoor will open next to you. And next to you on the bridge is a big, fat man who's clearly not well. He's sweating and he's really overweight. And I'm picking on men because if I said it was a woman, I'd just get shouted at. Okay. Right. So there's a big, fat man on the bridge next to you. And if you press this button, the trapdoor will open underneath him and drop him out the bridge, straight in front of the car. It will kill him, but it will stop the car. It will save the family of 5, and it will save the gardener. So now, raise up your cards. Red means you're not going to do anything, and green means you're going to press the button and open the trapdoor. Red does nothing. Green says we're going to press the button and open the trapdoor. And again, it's a little fun exercise, but I think you get the idea at this intersection in today's world of humanity and technology, in a room of mostly homogeneous people in terms of your careers, in terms of your organization, in terms of what you do, to pay the bills mostly, all right? In a homogeneous group, we got a 50-50 split when dealing with an ethical dilemma. Interesting. Think about that. Think about this interchange, this intersection between technology and humanity. And so I started off today by saying, how did you get here? How did you arrive here? How did you arrive at this place, listening to this 5'6" ex-South African, now Australian, slightly balding guy talking about culture? So now we've got a picture of where culture sits in the history. Now let's look at where we're going. Let's look at what I believe, and it's my statement I make all the time, that the future of work is defined by the future of culture. The future of work is defined by the future of culture. Okay? And what does that mean? And I've taken 4 specific examples. By the way, if you follow my blogs, and there's a thing up at the end, if you follow my blogs, I'm writing quite a lot of blogs on this subject. They published in a number of magazines as well. So let's look at the first one. Who's heard of the term employee engagement? Pretty much everyone. How about employee experience? Okay. There's a lot of work now that says we don't have employee engagement anymore. We have employee experience. And as we move to the future, as our organizations move to the future, employee experience will become more critical. My first job as an engineer at Anglo American, that's how I started off today, I was expected to be at work before the boss and leave after the boss? Anyone been in that situation? Okay, you're in modern, either you're a lot younger than me or you're in modern organizations, okay. But that is part of the change to employee experience. That is part of the change. I have a team of only about 15 people in Perth, in Australia. Their hours are flexible. If they want to arrive at 10 o'clock in the morning and work till 7 o'clock at night, I don't care. All right? It is part of that employee experience. It is about the flexibility. It is about the next generation of workforce. It is about the potential of 4-day working weeks. 4-day working week, that sounds like an amazing thing. How much more productive would you be working 4 days flat out? Now you're all working 6 days flat out. So 4 days flat out and then actually knowing you get a break. Makes much more sense. I'm not saying every organization will embrace that, but these are ideas about the future. It is about the fact that companies have suddenly realized they can't put their team members under physical and psychological stress. They've suddenly realized that it is about the employee experience. There's a lot of work being done, and again, you may or may not want to put your hands up on this. How many of you have changed companies recently? When I say recently, within the last year. Okay? So let me ask a question. Does culture have a value? Does culture have a value? Can you measure the value of culture? And so there's a lot of talk around, I've actually published a few blogs on this idea as well, that people will choose a company and maybe take a slightly lower salary or total remuneration package because being part of that culture is more important. Being in a culture place where they can be happy, where they can be productive, where they can be recognized as part of a team, as opposed to being a number in an organization or under a lot of stress. So a lot of organizations publicly are known to put their team members under a lot of stress. 24/7. We live in the Google, Siri, connected 24/7 world. I talk to my kids about Google time and Siri time. Okay? Sometimes we need to step away from that. As employers, we don't expect, or we shouldn't expect our team members to be on Google time or Siri time. We should be looking at the employee experience. We should be understanding that if we create an environment where people want to be there, where maybe the value is fun. Maybe fun is our, and when I talk about fun, I'm not talking about Google, orange beanbags and tables and, table tennis tables and that kind of stuff. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an environment where people are excited to be there. The fact that most of you have made it here on a Saturday morning in Kathmandu is an indication of that you're enjoying what you're doing. At least I'd like to think so. Either that or you've come to meet new people and find a new job, but we won't go down that road. Okay. So, employee experience is one of the things about the future. It is, it's hard on a Saturday morning because I'm this hyperactive sort of person. I'd like to all have you jumping up and, screaming, but no, we're not going to do that. Okay. So, the second one of these things is about AI. Now, AI. Is artificial intelligence going to create more jobs or less jobs? Let's have a vote. Okay, you can just use your hands this time. Who thinks that there will be less jobs with the advent of AI? Please raise your hand. Okay, and who thinks there'll be more jobs? And aren't those of you saying there are more jobs so happy? Because somebody has to write the software to program it. Okay. But let me explain it a bit more. The reason I did that little red and green card exercise about the intersection of humanity and technology was actually about AI, and it was to lay the framework for this. Think about this. How in an AI environment do you program ethics? When the fact is, in this homogeneous audience, you couldn't all reach the same conclusion on an ethical dilemma, how is AI going to take your jobs? How is AI truly going to replace the human? Yes, in the monotonous, day-to-day, repetitive task, absolutely. Okay, absolutely it's going to do that. And that's the third thing I'm going to talk about now, is how we deal with that as organizations. But think about that little exercise where you are all a little bit uneasy. I could see that, and that's okay. Ethics is supposed to make people uneasy. But it was also to prove a point that in this intersection of humanity and technology, we cannot replace the human view of ethics. Okay. So I believe AI will create more jobs. It will create different jobs. The kids who are coming out of school today, well, some of them, the kids in primary school today will be in jobs that don't exist yet. We all know that. If you think about the roles you're in now, did those roles exist 5 and 10 years ago? That's why I'm very reluctant to admit I was once a software engineer. To place that into a context for you, what being a software engineer, when I did my master's in software engineering, which I graduated 32 years ago, I was the first C++ programmer in South Africa. Okay? All right, I had to import my own compiler, which was a 3-pass compiler running on 8086 computers. So I really am dating myself now. But would I call myself a software engineer today? No, because I have no idea what goes on today. Okay. So let's look at, so AI, I believe, in the future will be more jobs, but just different jobs. Education and learning, continuous learning and education. Your organizations need to build in, like the company who chose Propel as their set of values, they need to build in continuous learning. What do I mean by that? I mean because the jobs you're in now won't exist in 5 years, or they'll be different in 5 years. So not only do your organizations have to embrace continuous learning, you need to embrace continuous learning. You need to, as people, I started out today saying, where have you come from? How did you get here? And think about how you got here. How much learning have you done from that time when you made a decision to sort of follow this path to actually getting here? How much learning have you done? How much of that learning is embedded in your psyche? But it needs to be bigger than that. Organizations need to be bigger than that. So as people lose their jobs with AI, as I said, some people will lose their jobs. Repetitive tasks that can be easily programmed, those are going to go. But what do the organizations have to do? They have to build in structures to retrain those people for jobs that don't exist yet. Are there any HR people in the room? That's one hell of a task. Build in an infrastructure to create learning for people who don't know what the jobs are going to be that they're going to have to do. But it is part of the future of work and the future of culture. And the last one is the water cooler. Now, the water cooler is probably, I guess, when I started understanding what Scrum was all about, to me it was about standing around the water cooler for 10 minutes in the morning. Okay? That was my naive understanding of it. But yet, the water cooler is significant because we talk about the future in terms of the virtual water cooler. How much work has been done around the water cooler? How much, and it could be the coffee machine today, by the way, this is software. All right? How much has been done around the coffee machine? How much have we done already in developing technologies to make a virtual water cooler? Right? How many of your team members in your agile team or your Scrum are in disparate places? You're not all in the same office. Anyone? Hello? Everyone got does anyone understand what I said? If you don't, I understand the background of the accent and all that. Okay? I think that is part of the future. That is one of my takes on the future. One of my takes on the future is that the virtual water cooler is going to become a critical component of what we do. So, whether it's, Microsoft Teams has gone a long way in developing this easy-to-use technology, video technology, sharing of documents, etc., that you could be in the same office or you could be millions or thousands of miles away from each other. And I'm not pushing a particular platform or anything, but that's what I use with the guys who developed my software, and it was their choice of how we were going to communicate, because they are a 12-hour flight from where I live. Okay? But I understood the idea from a team-building point of view of developing this virtual water cooler, developing this environment where everybody feels like they're standing around the water cooler or the coffee machine every morning, but yet they're actually in displaced places or remote places. So those are my takes on where the future goes. Those are my takes on where you've come from. I started out by asking you, where did you come from? How did you get to this place? How did you get to this place of culture? How did you get to this place on a Saturday morning, listening to me, talking about the future and the future of culture? Don't ever forget how you got to this place. Because if you know how you got here, you can work out where you're going. Peter Drucker was often badly quoted as saying that culture ate strategy for breakfast. I titled this talk, "If Culture Really Ate Strategy for Breakfast, What's for Dinner?" In other words, what's the future? If culture is really driving your organizations into the future, if culture is really that critical component that I believe it is, and those 84 companies that I've interviewed around the world have said it is, then the future of culture is the future of work. Enjoy your next 2 days at the conference. Namaste.